my family has been in the world of dentistry for a while. When I mean a while, my grandfather was an orthodontist in 60s and 70s, in Los Angeles. He had three orthodontic practices in the Los Angeles area, kind of before multi-location was a thing. A little bit ahead of his time, maybe too much ahead of his time. After I kind of share with you the background a little bit, see, he did very well for himself. I mean, he would take the family out to Babel Island, Newport Beach for months at a time. This is a true story. Would fly in my grandmother. He would like get their grand piano. She was a big musician. They would get their grand piano and take it from their house in LA into Newport Beach, which is it's not a super quick trip. And anyway, so you could imagine just did very well for himself and then just made a lot of really silly personal investment mistakes. And he ended up losing his three practices, fell into bankruptcy, unfortunately. Did his bankruptcy stint, got multi-locations again, orthodontists from all the way from Los Angeles down to Riverside, Southern California. And then he got to about 5 locations in the 90s, and then he had a heart attack during one of our family Christmas gatherings. Nobody knew it at the time. They're very, very private, very quiet people, my grandparents, and they drove all the way back from San Diego to LA, which for those who know, that's like not a short trip in the car, a couple hours, which certainly did damage on his heart. It was long story short, he was forced to retire again. Or excuse well, not retire, but he was forced to into bankruptcy again and then forced to retire. So bankruptcy twice and in an orthodontic practice. My grandmother, my sweet grandmother in her 70s, she was a flautist. She played the flute, taught flute, and 70 years old, going to high school teaching flute, as you can imagine, was probably not awesome for her, and that's definitely not how they pictured their life, if you can imagine. And so as a result, almost my entire family became like financial advisors, pretty much like just seeing my grandparents just squander living in an awesome situation for themselves. And then my brother, Jonathan Moffat, who's very active in the dental space, he chose to focus just on dentists specifically on the personal side to avoid, other doctors falling into the same pitfalls my grandfather did. I thought I was going.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Dentment. Masood, I believe we lost the count of episodes. What do we call this? Episode
No, actually,
765?
I just counted yesterday. Literally done 68. Out of those 68, 2 of them ended up not being recorded at the end, we realized. So, yeah, technically
Lessons learned.
Hey, man, that's awesome. Damn, that's great, man. I love it.
Yeah, well
I
done.
love it.
Well done.
Thank you
That's
so
exciting.
much. Yeah, man, it is indeed exciting. I always say this when we bring guests to, anyone, that the one thing that I love about the dental industry is that the people willing to help one another out and uplift each other. That's one thing that I love about our industry. Every time I reach out to anybody from our industry and ask for anything, I have never received a no from them. And I love that about the people in dental industry. Gentlemen like yourself, Mr. Austin, thank you so much, man. I truly appreciate you giving us your time. Time is the greatest asset of ours. So the fact that you give us that, I'm truly grateful for that, man. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me and appreciate the kind words. Thank you. This will be
Absolutely,
great.
for sure. All right. Well, today we got Mr. Austin Moffat. Mr. Austin optimizes the cash flow and help profitability for dental practices. He's a fractional CFO and he's a DSO and practice growth expert. Those are all the things that I love because in dentistry, that's one thing we as dentists struggle is figuring out the ways to grow our practices. So today, Mr. Austin is going to crack the code once for all.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm trying to think if there's any other like hot words that you didn't say on my behalf. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, man, those are super hot. Thank you so much. Mr. Austin, go ahead, introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us what you do, why you do it, how long you've been in the dental field, and then we'll get the questions rolling.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Yeah, and appreciate being able to echo my voice on this platform. It's been good. So a little bit of a background. My family has been in the world of dentistry for a while. when I mean a while, my grandfather was an orthodontist in 60s and 70s, in Los Angeles. He had 3 orthodontic practices in the Los Angeles area, kind of before multi-location was a thing. A little bit ahead of his time, maybe too much ahead of his time. After I kind of share with you the background a little bit, see, he did very well for himself. I mean, he would take the family out to Babel Island, Newport Beach for months at a time. This is a true story. Would fly in my grandmother. He would like get their grand piano. She was a big musician. They would get their grand piano and take it from their house in LA into Newport Beach, which is not a super quick trip. And anyway, so you could imagine, just did very well for himself, and then just made a lot of really silly personal investment mistakes, and he ended up losing his 3 practices, fell into bankruptcy, unfortunately. Did his bankruptcy stint, got multi-locations again, orthodontists from all the way from Los Angeles down to Riverside, Southern California. And then he got to about 5 locations in the 90s, and then he had a heart attack during one of our family Christmas gatherings. Nobody knew it at the time. They're very, very private, very quiet people, my grandparents, and they drove all the way back from San Diego to LA, which for those who know, that's like not a short trip in the car, a couple hours, which certainly did damage on his heart. Anyways, long story short, he was forced to retire again. Or excuse, well, not retire, but he was forced to into bankruptcy again, and then forced to retire. So bankruptcy twice, and in an orthodontic practice. My grandmother, my sweet grandmother, in her 70s, she was a flautist. She played the flute, taught flute, and 70 years old, going to high school teaching flute, as you can imagine, was probably not awesome for her, and that's definitely not how they pictured their life, if you can imagine. And so as a result, almost my entire family became like financial advisors, pretty much. Like just seeing my grandparents just squander living in an awesome situation for themselves. And then my brother, Jonathan Moffat, who's very active in the dental space, he chose to focus just on dentists, specifically on the personal side, to avoid, other doctors falling into the same pitfalls my grandfather did. I thought I was going the personal side. I leaned more towards the business and corporate, so accounting and finance, if you will. And so ever for the past 10 plus years, almost 13 years, I've been doing dental accounting for quite some time. And as a result, we found that a lot of our friends, a lot of our clients, yeah, the accounting is good, but a lot of that was just like requisites to get taxes done and to meet like the bank covenants, right? To like keep their loans and maintain their loans. And so we said, look, there's actually like this is real, like these numbers and data are real assets. These are serious reports that you should be making decisions on. And so we kind of took a really big consultative approach to the accounting and just said, look, we don't have to be your quote like in formal fractional CFO, but let us guide you like a fractional CFO would, so that you understand your practice from a financial standpoint in order to make like clean, accurate financial decisions that immediately impact the operations. Because a lot of the doctors, they understood the operations, they understood the clinical side for the most part, but how does that impact your profit margin, cash flow, your EBITDA when you want to sell? Because everyone's looking to sell, right? That's everyone's gold goose. So that's pretty much in a high level nutshell. And so been in it for quite some time now. We work with close to about 250 dental practices across the country, and growing. And so I personally see about that many profit and loss and balance sheet statements every single month. And so I like to think that I've got like a pretty good pulse on the industry when it comes from like a financial standpoint, if that makes sense. And it's from the East Coast to the West Coast, North, South, Hawaii, right, Vermont. I mean, so it's we've got clients in just about every state, some more than others, certainly. So that's pretty much like my background, if you will, from a high level.
That's awesome, Austin. Yeah, that's a lot of I believe the information that you're sharing, it's so important because a lot of time, even when I went to the practice that I'm in now, and even though that my friend purchased it and we kind of asked me to come in, there is a lot of misconception about really understanding the profit losses statement and really understand the business side of it and being able to connect those two together. The one thing that you said that was interesting for me, you said your grandfather made some mistakes or fall into certain traps that maybe shouldn't have fallen into. Some of those traps that you believe that you would advise some dentists to stay far away from or not make those same mistakes.
Yeah, so my grandfather was more on the personal side, which my brother Jonathan could probably speak to a lot better than I can. I'll just tell you his specific example. He invested, he went all in on a big farm in Utah with one of the Osmonds, Donnie Murray Osmond, for those of you who know. So and it was probably a drop in the bucket for the Osmonds and not so much a drop in the bucket for my grandfather, and he lost out on that investment. So that's what caused him, in his first bankruptcy stint, unfortunately, to turn sour. And then obviously the heart attack. There's not much, but however, though, like flipping back to the business, I mean, look, this is true. Since we're kind of speaking about this, I just signed a client today out of Georgia who had a stroke a couple years ago. He was a practicing doctor, and he's still in the practice. He can't practice, so that's really tough. But he's acting as the chief executive. He partnered with us, and in our initial discussions, he said, I wanted to grow. I want to grow this thing to 2 and 3 practices the next couple of years. I want to be like a proper executive. Even though I can't practice, I'd like to teach what I know, teach what I've learned. Understandably, his practice has taken a little bit of a dip in production, and of course, margin as a result. But some of that's out of his control, and so I don't know if he had a plan. We haven't really gotten that far yet, but he's been able to take that in stride. You know what I mean? And so I think no one plans for an accident. No one plans for something bad to happen. But it's good to be aware and be prepared, or maybe have a plan A or B or C or D. You know what I mean? Obviously, plan A is be healthy and be no accidents, obviously. But like a plan B is, okay, if I do that, now what, right? So that's obviously one thing, and it's not fun or comfortable to talk about, but it's smart, right? You don't know if, knock on wood, you're gonna have a stroke or have a heart attack. Or we had a client last year who was skiing in Park City and they tore their ACL and they were out for 4 months, right? And they were practicing, and then they couldn't for a little bit, right? So but they had associates able to step in for them and kind of carry that load, heavier load temporarily. And look, they did that. So some of those doctors had equity, so some of those kind of took that ownership on their hands, even if that's not necessarily what they signed up for. But they're like, look, I've got ownership in this. I want this practice to succeed. We've got this crazy situation with this doctor over here who was laid up for a little bit. I gotta, tighten my belt a little bit and cinch up my pants, and let's go to work, until the doctor can get back on his feet. So I think, having those thoughts, those plans, just in these specific situations. I think there's other situations that we could talk on and focus on, but those specifically, they're good things to at least be thinking of, or having a discussion, or at least just say, hey guys, so if something does happen, are we in a good spot where if I'm not practicing, that we'll be okay. I'll be okay personally, right? And those are unfortunate, difficult, but needed and appropriate conversations to have.
That's
So
amazing.
that's an important thing. Yeah, that's an amazing thing. Austin, as far as the profit loss estimate and then the margins that you talk about, because a lot of time we talk about the margins and we talk about where the margin needs to be for a practice, for a dental practice. Just for the younger doctors or even the doctors that are out, like when you're looking at the profit loss statement, what is the healthy practice look like in your perspective? Like when you're looking at a practice, you said, okay, like your overhead is this percentage, your supply is this percentage. How do you break that down to ensure that the practice looks healthy on the paper? Like where does the practice need to be percentage wise?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is something that I love to talk about. It's actually a lead magnet that my company has, and so if anyone reaches out to you on our behalf or us, whatever, I'm happy to give it to you as well. But we've got a couple page document that goes over for what that looks like. But I'll just go straight to the meat and potatoes, of your question. You want to be doing around 20% EBITDA, so that's earning there's pretty much like the meat of your practice, the operations, the EBITDA is, as I won't go into the acronym, excuse me, because it's pretty nerdy and doesn't really mean a ton, except for when you're trying to get lending or funding, or you're looking to get evaluation on your practice or sell, right? That's when that stuff comes into play. And so 20% is EBITDA, and then you want to be around 15% net income, i.e., profit margin. And so those are the high level takeaways. Now let's go into what that looks like from an overhead perspective. And everyone's a little bit different. That being said, like I said, looking at close to 250 dental practice financials every single month. Like I said, I like to think we've got a pretty good pulse. It's something that we look at on a quarterly basis. Where are our practices at from an average perspective? And we've been doing this for quite some time. Uh, and they're pretty in line with the practice benchmarks nationally. But so you want to be from dental supplies, you want to be 6% of revenue. Now, again, your practice might be a little bit different, a little bit less, a little bit more. That's okay. Everyone's a little custom, a little bit different, but that's generally where you want to be. Supplies, 6% of revenue. Lab expenses, lab fees, 5% of revenue. And then we'll go down to marketing. So I'm going to kind of touch on these key performing indicator like expenses that we see on a profit and loss statement for a practice. Marketing is a little bit different, depends on where are you. Are you trying to push growth, like aggressive growth? Right. I would say, the average is between 3 and 5% of revenue. Now, I would take that a step further. I would ask further questions like, are you getting reporting from your marketing agency, right? Because you could spend $5,000, but some doctors, some of us just feel like, hey, it's a checkbox, right? Hey, I'm spending for marketing, right? Like supposed to be getting new patients through the door, but like, do you know that? And if you are getting new patients through the door, are you having someone track what that revenue is? For example, if you're spending $5,000, do you know what you're getting back for that $5,000? And if you don't know, then ask who you're working with on the marketing side. And if they don't know, then I would strongly suggest probably working with a marketing company that knows dental that can provide those numbers. Typically, you want to be between 4 and 5x of what you spend in marketing. So if you're dropping 5Gs a month on marketing, you typically want to see between $20,000 to $25,000 in new patient revenue, plus or minus. We might have other people who are marketing experts, a bit smarter than me at that can give probably a little bit more dialed down, right? But generally speaking, that's about where you want to be. So that kind of we went down the rabbit hole on marketing for a second. But then going into payroll, which is always the biggest expense in any practice, you don't want to be above 50, or I'll give you a range, 50 to 55%. I really just say 50 because I'd rather get our clients as close to 50 as close as possible. And I'll break that down even further. Excuse me. So the 50%, 20% of revenue in associate pay and that's 20% of the overall revenue, what the hygiene brings in as well. So 20% of revenue, 10% in hygiene, so hygiene wages 10%, dental assistants 8%, front desk, which could include receptionist, office manager, right, 7%. All those, it's like 20, 10, 8, 7, that's 45%. So it gives you 5% in payroll fees and payroll taxes, right? And so it gets you a little bit under. Those shouldn't add up to 5%, but it gives you a little bit of wiggle room, plus or minus. And so that's the big one, right? Obviously, it's easy to look at and say your payroll's too high. It's way easier said than done to like look at that and dial that in. I would say the questions come back to, what is happening from a production, a scheduling, a collections issue as well. How are your collections, as a percent to your net production, for example. And then I'll just about done here. And then rent, obviously it's a fixed expense. but you want to be around 6% of the overall revenue. That's more of an indicator again of revenue, but are you justifying your space, if you will, with the revenue that you're bringing in? So about 6%, and then like I said, your EBITDA or your net operating income, which is just your operations, 20%, and then bottom line is 15. So I mean, I could talk about that all day. I could tell you the examples that we have some clients that they've taken like that. That's our recipe, and it works well for a lot of our clients because that 15%. You might have some loans and some other owner distributions, other things, but you should open up to about 10% of cash flow, right? So if you're doing profit sharing, those figures are super important. But um, we have some of our clients that have taken our recipe, if you will, and they've turned it into their own, which is exactly what we want. And so we've got a client, a group, 7 location group out of Illinois, and they're averaging about 30% of their net income. So they doubled that 15% to 30, and they've done it for all 7 locations. And they're not practicing; they're running as executives. And so we see see our situations like that, and we're like, look, that is what can be done, right? Like that is the dream. Now they're a little bit of an anomaly because that's really high and they're so consistent, but it can be done, right? And so anyways, I could just go on and on and on, and I'll shut up here, Daka,
No,
because I could just
no,
go on and on. I could
no,
nerd
I
out all
love it.
day.
No, I love the passion, man. This is what this is about. This is what I love about this podcast. And Masood knows too. I want to make sure that when we talk on the podcast, I want it to be somewhat educational, but also I want it to be informative because these are the type of information we don't learn in dental school, and that's why I want
Yeah.
us to have these conversations. If you had to use an example, like you said, if you have to use an example of a practice and you have to say, hey, like this is how much this practice is making, and these are what their expenses, and this is how much the owner, can you kind of just give us some number examples so that the audience can have a better understanding instead of the percentages of as far as like looking at the
Yeah.
P&L, hey, this is what this is going to look like. Because I think that would give a very good understanding from when they're looking at the P&L and what the numbers need to look like. So that way they can say, okay, this is what I'm looking at if I would to want to buy practice or open a practice or do anything.
Yeah. So I'll give a couple of examples. Because I think I think picking on that group out of Illinois is probably not fair,
Hmm.
right? Because it's like, yeah, that. Excuse me, that's the dream.
Yeah.
That is the dream, and you want to get there, and their example shows that it's possible to get there. But I'll be honest with you, most groups are doing about 20 to 25% EBITDA, net operating income, and between like 14 and 16, 17 net income. So I'll pick on a group. I'm actually on one right now. I won't mention where they are just to be respectful, and
Yeah,
I'll drop
sure.
some real numbers. Now, I was meeting with this this um this doctor earlier today, and we were going over their numbers, and they're doing about 22%. I'll give you all these numbers, I promise. They're doing 22% EBITDA, and they're doing I can't remember. I think it was like 15 or 12% net income. But I'll drop these numbers. They're a 6 operatory practice, general practice. Let's see. So sorry, I wasn't ready to pull this up, and then I pulled the wrong one.
No, you're
Um,
good, man. Sorry.
no. This is great. Put me on the spot. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna do. They're trailing 12. So trailing 12 months and trailing. Yeah. So everyone should know what that is. If not, I'm just pulling their last 12 months. Some of it's dipping into 2024. But they're trailing 12 months. The revenue is $1.6 million, and that's pure collections, bank deposits, if you will. And so I would say probably your average-esque size general practice, so nothing too crazy, nothing too wonky. And then I'll just go down the KPIs like I was saying, and I'll share the total number and then the percent. So their dental supplies, they are doing something that most practices don't, and they are budgeting like crazy. I think they're using a lot of prior year's inventory. I don't understand it fully, but they're doing about 3% in dental supplies. That's about $46,000 a year in dental supplies on a $1.6 million practice. That's pretty unique, I would say. Expect it to be double that, if I'm being totally honest with you. So they're doing something on the expense side that's really, really allowing them to beat the national average. Lab fees, they're about 7%, which is about 2 points higher than we would want. Remember, we want to be around 5. It's about 1K that they're dropping. So all in, they're under 10%. That's actually really good overall. Even though they're high on labs, they're dramatically low on dental supplies. And so in the end, it actually allows them to be healthy. I'll just stay high level because I can nerd out on this all day. Their overall payroll is, and I've got it broken out here by position, but I'll just kind of save everyone a little bit. They're at 48% overall payroll overall. So they're under on clinical expenses and they're also under in payroll. Quick little story, if that's okay, just for educational purposes. We have a lot of clients that send us practice financials that they're looking to acquire. A lot of our clients, they're very growth minded. And so they're looking to grow. They're looking to expand their dental empire, if you will. And so we get almost every week, if not every other week, at least one set of practice financials, not our clients, just someone, who's selling. And I will go to Vegas and I would be a rich man if I actually did this. Or I guess an even wealthier man, I should say. But if clinical expenses is over 11%, that's dental supplies and lab fees. If that's over 11% and payroll is over 50%, just those two areas alone, I will go straight down to the bottom line and I will bet. I bet you these guys are having a hard time breaking even if they're over clinical expenses 11% and over on payroll 50%. I bet they're having a hard time cash flowing. Period. And I would say 9 times out of 10, I would say I'm right because just those two categories alone is 61% of your revenue. 61, just those two. And so if I were to say, hey, take one thing away from this podcast, this segment, take away getting your clinical expenses under control, around 11% in total for labs and supplies, and get your payroll under control. That includes the owner, doctor, and associates. And I know some people don't like, well, owner, doctor, I really should be below the net operating income. Okay, I guess, but you're still part of payroll. Like that's still cash leaving the business or the bank. So unfortunately, those are still wages. It doesn't matter if you're an owner or not, and that has to be considered. Otherwise, you're making it up somewhere else, right? You're maybe not doing a bunch of marketing spend. Maybe you have an incredible deal on your lease. Maybe you're just crushing it in other areas. But I would say if you're over in those two areas, you're having a hard time breaking even. But I'm just going to jump straight down on this practice, this $1.6 million practice. They're doing, let's see, I actually am now looking at the trailing 12. Their year to date was 22. Their trailing 12, which is November 2024 through October 2025, they're doing about 250. So 250K in net operating income. That's 15. So it's a little bit lower than where we want it to, but they have, I'm looking at it right now, they have 4.5% in taxes, right, which is the T in EBITDA. So we strip that out and they're at 19%. So 19% net operating income, and then their net income, their takeaway is about 10%, about 9%. So, and they're doing a little over 100 grand, actually 120 grand, excuse me. So that's pretty much the numbers in a nutshell. But I'll tell you, it's easy to perform this, for yourself if that's something that you're wanting to do. Just take your profit and loss statement, get it in an Excel format, and then just divide the expense to your total revenue and then drag it down. And that's going to give you your percentage. And again, the main ones are going to be dental supplies, lab fees, marketing, payroll, rent, net operating income, net income, the 7.
I see. As far as the rent part of it goes, what percentage of that has to be your rent? Because the rent part is a big piece of it as well. How does that plays into that expenses and things like that?
Yeah, so it's a fixed expense, right? Or it should be anyways. But it's a fixed expense, and so it should not exceed 6% of the overall revenue. It should not exceed 6%. And again, it's a fixed expense, so it is a pure reflection of revenue at the end of the day. Look, we've got, and I'll say this, it also matters where you are in the country. We have a client that has a practice in West Hollywood. That's not going to be 6%. It's not 6%. It's going to be much higher. So that's pretty unique. New York, the Bay Area, right, Miami, all the high cost of living zip codes, those are going to likely have a little bit higher, which 6% changes, 8 or 9% even. But what does that mean? That means that if you want to take home, 20% EBITDA and 15% net operating income, then you're going to need to, look at other areas to shave that off, or you're just going to need to accept that your EBITDA is just going to be a little bit smaller and your net income and cash flow is just going to be a little bit smaller. But I'll say this, we do have a couple of clients in Manhattan, and they do well enough where that's actually, yes, their rent is higher, but the revenue that they do actually brings it down below 5%, or 6%, I think, for all of them. So they do a great job with that. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's funny. It's gonna be tomorrow. I'll tell you that much. It's gonna be tomorrow. Like I mentioned, we just signed that client earlier today. The doctor had a stroke, but the one before that was the end of October, so about a month ago. And it was a doctor out of Sacramento, California. And the first thing that we do, and I don't know if this is very good, but the first thing we do is we do that same exercise where it's, hey, if we haven't done it before, because we do like free like financial analysis reviews, just to let doctors know like where they're at and what they like, where they're bleeding and where they're doing well and what they can do to improve. Like we do that. But in this case, we did it. It was actually a referral from my brother's company. And anyways, but that's the first exercise we do. Where are you at as a percent of revenue and your clinical expenses and payroll, and where's your cash flow? Because if we can address those two things out the gate, then we're trying to get our clients a really quick win. And by focusing on those areas and increasing their cash flow, those are huge wins and huge value adds immediately out the gate. Yes. Yeah, of course. Sorry, go ahead. You're cutting out a little bit. So sorry, Masood. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it's kind of in and out, but I think I got your questions. Yeah, so first thing is what do we do? And to identify the systems, what's working, what's not, and then B, how long does it typically take? So first thing is what do we do? Yeah, like I just said, we do that full on financial analysis review. We look at the numbers, we look at the percent of revenue. I'll be honest, when percentages are consistently above where they should, we just go straight to revenue and just say, talk to me about what's going on, from a clinical side of things. And then we'll often look at their collections, their AR aging out of their practice management system, just to kind of see what's going on in there. I will say we've done that a couple times. And we actually just did this in September with a client out of Houston, and they had over $300,000 in outstanding AR aging. We signed them up the middle of August, and we did that exercise, and anyways, they are in the middle of recouping a lot of that, but it's a healthy exercise. So that's one thing that we do. In terms of like systems, a lot of that is a lot of it is questions like, do you have budgets in place? Yes or no, right? Because if you're trying to get to 6%, I'll just use easy numbers. If you're doing about $1.2 million in revenue a year, which is smaller, smaller practice, but that's about $100,000 a month. So 6%, of that is $6,000. And so, okay, if you're wanting to do 6% of your revenue on $100,000 a month practice, then you want to set a budget around $6,000. I'd argue you want to push that back closer to $5,500. Give yourself a $500 buffer, if you will. Do you have budgets in place? Yes or no? Right? Most of the time, there's no budgets in place. Okay, great. Is there an approval process in place when it comes to people making purchases, right? Is there oversight? Is someone checking off, making sure you're not ordering too many supplies, right? And your inventory, is building and building and building, right? What does that look like? We don't go too much in the clinical because we're not clinicians. So that is kind of like our swim lane, if you will, is we can't speak to that because we're not experts in that area. But everywhere else, it's okay, what does payroll process look like? Is there an approver? Is there someone that's signing off on things? Excellent, great. Okay, marketing. I gave you that exact scenario of our story, if you will. It is like you're spending marketing. Do you know what your return on ad spend is? Do you know what that is? Do you know you're dropping 3K, so 3% of revenue, 100,000, right? You're dropping 3Gs. Are you getting $12,000 to $15,000 in new patient revenue? You don't even know what you're getting. You know what I mean? So like, there's a lot of these questions, and I would say we find out a lot about them in the first couple weeks of the relationship. That we get our arms around the financials. We make our own notes. We make our own comments, things that we want to address and talk about when we go over the like in-depth analysis with our clients. And so those are things that we find out. And I would say probably the first 30 days is really when we start to understand the processes, what's going on, what's not. Let's set some goals, right? Again, in the first 30 days. And then we meet on a monthly basis, bare minimum, once a month, at least once a month, review the ongoing most recent financials with our client, and then we touch on these goals that we've set with them, and then we review their like goals versus the actual financials. Hey, we set a goal of 6%, that's $6,000. You know, you're consistently at 7,000, so someone's not following along to the budget. Let's revisit that. You know what I mean? And so that's our process in a nutshell. But there's a lot of value in that first 30 days. Yeah, it's a good question. Look, if you know of an automation tool out there for the accounting and the financial, please tell me. I know that it's coming. It's not like I'm not ignorant. Trust me, we've done a lot of. I am on a big AI and tech like email thread that goes out every single month, and I'm in line, and I've done demos of these AI staff accountants that don't exist. Trust me, huge waste of my time. But it's coming. So in terms of automation, like none. And in fact, this is something that I personally do, especially with new clients, because like I said, we want to provide like value as immediate as possible. And so to do that, I don't feel like there's any other replacement other than I do have incredible team members that they can do a great job, but I feel so invested in it, and I feel I have so much passion around it that I actually want to do it because I want to find these golden nuggets, right? I want to see what are they doing, why are they doing it, and what can we do to make us look freaking awesome to the client, like immediately, so they're stoked, you know, really quickly signing up with us that there's a victory. Like, hey, I did make a good choice. Awesome, right? And so I don't know about any automation. I definitely would like to know if there is any. I'm so open to that, and I know it's coming, like I said, and so that's something that we will be taking on, you know, when that stuff is available and works. But there's no automation process at the moment for that, and I would say it's very hands-on, very just kind of getting our hands dirty with that. And I'll be honest with you, at least as of right now, I kind of prefer that because I feel like when I meet with the client, like it's my work that I'm showing, it's my stuff that I'm going through with them, and you know, I was the one that put in the work, and so I want to share that, right? So so if you know anything, Masood, yeah. Well, it's really funny you say that, by the way, because I have a finance tech stack that it's a like ongoing document. I've got probably close to like 20, maybe 25 things that I'm looking at, like all these the AI driven tax intake and AI tax research. Anyways, and I've yet to see something that could automate that. So you will be one of the first to know, Masood, once I find something and that I know that it works. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Yeah. Really? That's wild. That's wild. Whoa. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah, look, I think the world of tech and all that, I mean, automation has to have, I mean, it's coming, you know, it's already here, and I probably just have no idea where to look if I'm being totally honest. But I also think it's necessary because you want to focus on the things that matter and the things that drive value to your business, to your practice. to your point, I mean, do you imagine the automation? I mean, look, speaking of websites, there's websites that there's automation, websites that create websites. You know what I mean? So like, there's certainly stuff that exists. But I mean, I do completely agree with you. I think it's so needed. Um, and it's coming. It's coming, and it's gonna give more time to the movers and shake. Well, to everyone, but it's really gonna benefit the movers and shakers because they're gonna take that and run with it. And certainly, there's gonna be people that are gonna cling on to, well, this worked. This has been working for me forever. You know what I mean? But like, times have changed. Maybe you recognize it, maybe you don't, right? So I can just speak from an accounting and finance perspective. I know it's coming, and we'll certainly be implementing that with our firm and our clients. And certainly from like a clinical side of things, automation will be coming. In fact, it is. In fact, I just now remembering talking about this. There are platforms. I'm not sponsored by or have a deal or partnership with any of these guys, but like there are companies that exist right now that are automating insurance claims. Period. In fact, we have a client out of Texas. They have 4 practices, and they were able to replace 3 of their front desk employees with this platform. I'm trying to remember it. I have to go and look. This always happens to me. I always forget it when I need it the most. But it automates insurance claims, and so they actually replaced 3 full-time employee wages with this platform, and now one of those 4 is now kind of overseeing this AI platform that's automated. That is actually is the first time I've actually heard it happening. Like some tech has actually replaced people in the industry. No, I'm gonna find it for you. It's called. I'm gonna find it. I promise. Yeah. I'm not affiliated with these guys. They're out of okay, they're called Stratus. Use stratus.com. In fact, it's these guys, maybe not the best, but yeah, so Stratus, they're out of Provo, Utah. So shout out to Utah some more. Stratus. I know it's like Mirror, but Stratus. I've
Stratus,
done a handful of
sponsor us. We need a
hey,
sponsor.
hey, kickbacks. No, I'm just kidding. No, but look, that's who they use. That it's like specifically, that's who they use. I know there's other ones out there, and I was very shocked to hear that. We had done a demo a couple of times for some of our clients, and so we let our clients know who they are, what they do, what our other clients have done. Anyways, and some people have looked into it. Some of it are like it does like 80% of what I'm looking for, so I'm not ready. But for these guys out of Texas, I mean, full on legit three full-time employee replacements,
That's
which is pretty
amazing.
crazy.
That's amazing. Also, the one thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap this up, I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, what are some of the common mistakes that you see general dentists making in their business that can have a real consequence of financial consequence on the dentist? Because a lot of time, one of the reasons I believe recently I reached out to you because me and Masood, as part of Dentment, we're building a course section just because of this, because we want it to be educational for these younger doctors. What are some of the mistakes that you see dentists making that are really costly for their business that they should stay away from making? Either when it comes to investment, when it comes to dental business, when it comes to whatever that may be, what are some of the things that you see sometimes can cause a little bit of a stress for that dentist, and you would recommend them not to probably go down that rabbit hole?
There's so many avenues that you could take. I feel like I'll stay high level and then just pick a few that just big ones. One is, and forgive me for being generic, but it is true, not having a goal, not having practice goals. Like, and that starts from the top. You need a monthly production revenue goal. You have to do that. And I know, I would say most people do, but like, is it realistic? Hey, we want to do $3 million in revenue. Okay, awesome. All right, or not 3 million, 300 million, 3 million. Excuse me, 3 million, $3 million in revenue. Okay, what's 3 million divided by 12? Great, that it's this. So we're gonna every single month. Well, that's not how that works, right? Like we know that, like we know we're in December. We know December kind of sucks because the second half of the month there's very little activity in terms of like patient flow, and expenses don't change. Like we know that December's tough, which means that January cash flow is a little bit tight because the second half of December wasn't awesome. And so great. We know that summer months for a lot of our for a lot of practices, those suffer. So September is like what I call it. We know that there are certain months that just blow for practices, and it's part of the industry that we're in, unfortunately, and it is what it is. Realistic goals. Hey, having that fixed, hey, we want to do, $150,000 a month in production every single month. That awesome. I love that for you. I hope that happens. Is that realistic? Because when I look at your last year, 2025, January, February, March, April, May, right? It was very much like this, right? So having realistic goals, like a realistic, so it starts at the top, like I said, realistic revenue goals by month. So that's the first thing. And then from there, do you have goals? Do you know, to your point, you said a lot of doctors don't know where to go. Just type in dental practice benchmarks in whatever state you're in. You can go on our website, and this isn't me telling you to get, but you can, like, and get our benchmarks. You can download our 2025 benchmark, practice benchmark, and that's a really good place to start. And so if you don't have those goals, then you are sailing a ship without a compass, right? And hoping that it works out for you in the end. Really what it is, right? And so that's the high level. The other thing I would say is if you're looking at practice acquisition, which I think everyone should. I mean, it's my personality, but I love growth so much. Like I get a high in talking to people about growth. It's freaking exciting. Like people are trying to like improve themselves, be better, like better themselves, and provide, better situations for, what I mean? It's awesome. I would say this, like do your due diligence on that practice full on. That's yes, the financials, but like make sure that you're having a third party, non-biased or whatever, take a look at those financials and actually understand the cash flow. Because if you take on a practice isn't cash flow, you're you're putting yourself in a world of pain, frustration, stress. You will not have amazing sleep. You'll have sleepless nights, kind of say. But like do your due diligence, and that's just on the financial and then clinical as well. So just like I think it's awesome. Go for it. I think it's easier than some people think it is. If I'm being honest, practice acquisition, it really is. But do it right. Go through, like, be patient. Like make sure things are checking your box. Make sure you're comfortable with it, right? And then move forward. I could go on, but I would say that those are, for the sake of me just stopping and on and on and on, because I could talk about this for ages. But I think those are the two takeaways and things, really recently that I've come across that have just really stood out when you ask that question is have a goal, start at the top with revenue, and be realistic. Everyone says I can do this, and that's when the stars aligned. And awesome. Is that realistic? Yes or no? If you don't know, then be a little conservative with your numbers, right? And then set goals from there. And then also just do your due diligence and be patient with yourself when you're looking at practice acquisition.
Well,
Beautiful.
Mr. Austin, I think that advice was the best thing that you could have said before we close out. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Get it.
Yes, Mr. Austin, I once again, on behalf of Masood, I truly appreciate you coming on, man. I believe these are the type of conversation that we need to have to ensure the people that are coming before me or after me or whatever the case may be, they're getting something. My goal is to provide information. I really, truly appreciate the opportunity for you to come on. I'm grateful for your time. Thank you for doing this. I mean, I really, truly appreciate it. And, if we can do anything, to help out, let us know as well. Hopefully, Masood and I will come up with something and we can automate something in your word. And then
Please do that. Please.
you never know. Maybe we'll reach out and say, hey, Mr. Austin, we just stole your idea, man.
I'll be your lab rat. Please. Seriously. I'll be your beta tester.
Well, thank you so much, man. I truly appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me. It's an honor, and this is great. Yeah, I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.